This suspense movie from over 20 years ago is definitely a must-see masterpiece for suspense enthusiasts. The ending of the movie still causes countless debates among audiences. This is Edward Norton's debut, with a level of fear, patient viewing, and a review at the end. The story begins with a horrific murder case, in which the local Catholic archbishop is brutally murdered and his death is tragic. Not only is he stabbed more than 90 times with a knife, but the killer also gouges out the bishop's eyes, chops off the finger on his right hand, and finally carves the strange number B32.15 on his chest. Due to the special identity of the deceased, the police attached great importance and soon discovered a young man covered in blood near the crime scene. After arresting him, they also found the bishop's ring in the other person's pocket. It seems that the culprit didn't run away. The news of catching the culprit quickly made it to the news. This news aroused Yuga's interest. Yuga is a well-known local lawyer who serves people with power and influence. As this case involves the local archbishop, Yuga decisively called the law firm to take on the case. This is a good opportunity to increase his visibility. He came to prison and met the suspect. The suspect's name is Xiao Bai. He was adopted by the bishop 2 years ago and is now helping in the church. The bishop is his benefactor, Yugo. Strange, why did Xiao Bai harm his benefactor like this? But Xiao Bai said that the person who killed the bishop was not himself. At the scene of the crime, there was a third person who was about to return books to the bishop's room. As he approached, he heard a sound coming from the bishop's room. When he opened the room, he found a mysterious masked person squatting next to the bishop's body. After seeing himself coming, the mysterious person rushed towards him and then he fainted. Xiao Bai explained that he had previously experienced sudden fainting symptoms and would lose some of his memories after waking up. When he woke up again, the mysterious person had disappeared, but he was covered in blood. At that time, he was panicked and instinctively ran away when he heard the sound of the police sirens. After understanding the situation, Yugo instructed Xiao Bai not to talk to anyone except himself, and then returned to the law firm. In fact, Xiao Bai's statement was not believed by Yugo at this time, but it also gave him the direction to defend himself, which was the motive for killing the bishop. Xiao Bai did not have a motive to kill the bishop. Now their investigation goal is to find those who have a motive to kill the bishop, in order to reduce Xiao Bai's suspicion. Additionally, a professional doctor is needed to assess the cause of Bai's fainting and amnesia. On the other hand, the prosecutor's office handed over the prosecution of Xiao Bai to prosecutor Jin Jie. Jin Jie is Yu Ji's ex-girlfriend. Yugo used to work in the prosecutor's office, where Jin Jie was Yu Ji's assistant. Now, Jin Jie is already the best prosecutor in the prosecutor's office, so she has been designated to be responsible for this case. The bishop's friend and former prosecutor of the prosecutor's office, Uncle Chang, is also very concerned about this case and subtly expresses his hope that the novice can be sentenced to death. Time soon arrived for the first trial. Before the fetal trial, Yugo instructed Xiao Bai not to say anything in court, just pretend to be innocent. Xiao Bai, however, believes that he doesn't need to pretend because he is inherently innocent.
Well, I am innocent.
That's it. That's exactly how I want you to look. That's exactly it. Now, can you remember that? Look in the mirror if you have to. That's the look.
I don't have to, Sal.
Watching the harmless appearance of the little white man and animal made Yuga doubt that there may really be another hidden truth in the case. After appearing in court, Jin Jie proposed to charge Xiao Bai with first-degree murder, while Yugo took the lead and proposed to conduct a psychological evaluation of Xiao Bai before proceeding with the trial. Actually, Brother Yu is here to collect evidence for himself and delay time. Yuga's assistant, Heij, came to Xiao Bai's rented apartment to search for evidence, but he ran into a mysterious person inside the apartment. While they were fighting, Heij pulled off an earring from the other person and brought it to Xiao Bai's face. Xiao Bai immediately recognized the owner of the earrings as Ah Wei, who worked as a janitor in the church just like Xiao Bai. Yuga asked Xiao Bai, "Why did Ah Wei come to your room? Can Ah Wei be the murderer of the bishop?" But Xiao Bai's answer was stuttering and unable to explain why. In addition, Xiao Bai has a girlfriend who has been missing for several days, but Xiao Bai doesn't know where he went. Obviously, Xiao Bai is hiding something from Yugo. Soon, Yugo applied for a psychological evaluation of Xiao Bai, and through conversation, it was found that Xiao Bai's mother passed away from a young age, and his father was a drunkard who frequently abused Xiao Bai. Therefore, he has been in a coma and has suffered from indirect amnesia since childhood. After escaping from home, he wandered around and was adopted by the bishop 2 years ago while begging on the street. Xiao Bai's girlfriend also worked in the church. They are both poor people adopted by the bishop, and their relationship is very good, but recently their girlfriend suddenly disappeared. On the other hand, Yu Gu discovered through investigation that the former prosecutor, Uncle Chang, who exerted pressure on the prosecutor's office, actually had a friendly relationship with the bishop and was not friends. Uncle Chang is currently engaged in real estate development. He has partnered with some wealthy businessmen to buy the community around the church and is preparing to demolish it for real estate development. The residents of the community have reported these issues to the bishop, hoping that the bishop will consider the livelihood issues of the community residents. Therefore, the bishop used his influence to prevent real estate development, but it also blocked Uncle Chang's financial path. Yu Gu suspects that the bishop was killed by Uncle Chang, which is why Uncle Chang is so concerned about the case. He hopes to close the case as soon as possible. The second trial began, and Jin Jie took out the murder weapon. According to the forensic autopsy, the perpetrator used his left hand to wield a knife and committed the crime against the bishop. Xiao Bai was a left-handed person, and the blood on his body on the day of his arrest was investigated and found to belong to the bishop. Therefore, it was determined that Xiao Bai was the perpetrator, while Yu Gu started with the motive for the murder. Since the prosecution has not yet found Xiao Bai's motive for the murder, and the bishop is Xiao Bai's benefactor, why did Xiao Bai act so cruelly on his benefactor? At the same time, he also revealed the grudges and grievances between Uncle Chang and the bishop. According to Xiao Bai's confession, he had met a mysterious person at the time of the crime, so it is very likely that Uncle Chang bought the murder, but Yu Ji's viewpoint was immediately refuted by Jin Jie. Do you remember the number B32.156 engraved by the murderer on the bishop's body when he died? Through police investigation, B35 found that page 156 of a book in the bishop's study was marked with a sentence.
No man, for any considerable period, can wear one face to himself and another to the multitude, without finally getting bewildered as to which may be the truth.
This sentence refers to the fact that the bishop has two faces after his predecessors. If the bishop was killed by Uncle Chang Man, then there is no need for the murderer to leave such a unique clue. Obviously, the passage specifically marked in the book hides the killer's motive for murder. After resting, Yu Gu was regretful for not discovering any clues in the book, but his assistant felt that the culprit might be Xiao Bai. However, through this period of contact with Xiao Bai's harmless appearance made Yu Gu firmly believe that Xiao Bai was definitely not the culprit. He asked his assistant to find the Wei who had infiltrated Xiao Bai's house, perhaps to find a breakthrough from him. Returning to prison, Xiao Bai continues to undergo psychological evaluation by a psychologist. The doctor found that every time he talked to Xiao Bai about his girlfriend, Xiao Bai clearly had some resistance, and the dripping sound of the camera running out of battery made Xiao Bai even more irritable. The doctor intentionally tapped the camera upon seeing this, intending to stimulate Xiao Bai's nerves. Hey!
Do you know what I can do with this thing?
Well, how the fuck should I know?
The fierce gaze of Xiao Bai frightened the psychologist, as if he had changed someone else. The doctor softly called out Xiao Bai's name, and Xiao Bai then looked up in confusion, completely forgetting what had just happened to him. On the other hand, Yu Gu and his assistant Heij finally found a way. Yu Gu forced Wei to ask why he wanted to go to Xiao Bai's house. Helpless, Wei could only explain that he was looking for a videotape. Turns out the bishop really has two faces in front of people. The bishop has a great benevolent face, but Betty often coerces Xiao Bai, Wei, and Xiao Bai's girlfriend to engage in multiplayer sports in front of him, and even records the sports footage. Wei believes that Xiao Bai cannot withstand the bishop's coercion, so he killed the bishop and retrieved the videotape. Because Xiao Bai was arrested, Wei believed that the videotape was hidden in Xiao Bai's house, so he came to his door to try to destroy it. Upon hearing this, Yu Gu arrived at the scene of the crime and indeed discovered a pile of videotapes collected by the bishop here. After returning to the law firm, he and his colleagues reviewed the content of the videotape. As expected, as Wei said, the content of the videotape is not pleasing to the eye, but these videos also confirm Xiao Bai's motive for murder. Yu Gu felt that he had been deceived by Xiao Bai, and he almost believed Xiao Bai's words before. He came to the prison, turned off the surveillance, and asked the white person later.
I want you to tell me the truth and do not even think about it. You fucking killed him, didn't you? You did it. You killed him. You're so foolish you did it, didn't you? Tell me the truth. Don't lie to me. You little fuck, you did it. You killed him. You fucking killed him.
Oh. What the hell you want from me now?
Quit your crying. I can't understand a goddamn word you're saying.
You little sissy, you make me sick.
The little white who turned around changed his face again, showing strong aggression, which is clearly a manifestation of multiple personalities. We call Xiao Bai's second personality Xiao Hei. He presses Yugo against the wall and points his right hand at Yugo to warn him not to bully Xiao Bai. Pay attention here, Xiao Hei is using his right hand. He directly confessed to Yugo that the bishop was killed by himself and has nothing to do with Xiao Bai.
He come crying to me like all stuttering and whining. I can't take it no more, Roy. You gotta help me, please, Roy. I said, shut your mouth, you little girl. Grow up, be a man, take care of yourself. Man.
Upon learning that Xiao Bai is suffering from schizophrenia, Yugo couldn't help but feel happy. Once it was determined that Xiao Bai has multiple personalities, he could use Xiao Bai's mental illness as a pretext to talk to him. Therefore, even if he was beaten up by Xiao Hei, he couldn't conceal Yuji's secret joy in his heart. He found a psychiatrist who did psychological evaluation for Xiao Bai and hoped that the other party could appear in court to testify for him. Although the doctor agreed, there are still two issues. The first is that the lawyer cannot change the direction of defense during the trial, because Yugo initially defended Xiao Bai as innocent, but now he needs to defend Xiao Bai for mental illness. Secondly, personality split is difficult to identify as a mental illness. Even if a novice suffers from schizophrenia, the culprit is essentially still a novice. If that video contains Yugo as evidence and is submitted to the court, the jury is likely to believe that Yugo is trying to show sympathy to Xiao Bai Bo. So how to submit a videotape to the court is another headache. At the suggestion of his colleague, Yugo anonymously sent the video to Jing Jia, who then submitted evidence to the court, allowing him to take the opportunity to reveal that Xiao Bai was suffering from schizophrenia. But when Jing Jia received the videotape, she immediately knew that it must have been Yuji's opponent who voluntarily brought the evidence to her door. There must have been a problem, but the content of the videotape clearly allowed him to sit idly by Xiao Bai's motive for murder, and he couldn't give up this evidence. Therefore, Jing Jia took the initiative to invite Yugo to the bar to inquire about the videotape, but Yugo pretended to be confused and claimed that she had never seen any videotapes. Jing Jia saw through Yuji's lies at a glance and guessed the reason why Yugo refused to submit the videotapes himself, just to get an impression score from the jury. But Jing Jia also has her own method. On the second day of the trial, Jing Jia asked He Go to testify in court and gradually asked about the origin of the videotape, which completely shattered Yuji's small plan. Helpless, Yugo could only hire a psychologist to appear in court as the author. He did not change his defense direction, but cleverly used language to make the psychologist mention that Xiao Bai had schizophrenia. And the psychologist also pointed out that it is impossible to murder the bishop with the psychological state of a novice, and the real culprit must be the second personality. Xiao Hei can simplify and question the professionalism of doctors, as he is not an expert in neuropsychology or specialized in studying multiple personalities. Moreover, the criteria for identifying multiple personalities are already quite strict and require long-term observation to diagnose them. How can one determine that Xiao Bai has multiple personalities based on one episode? Seeing all his means being streamlined and dismantled, Yugo could only use the last resort. He stimulated Xiao Bai in court, causing his second personality to appear. Becoming beautiful. However, cursing in such a secretive manner does not stimulate Xiao Bai at all. After all, I am Xiao Bai's defender and cannot openly point fingers at Xiao Bai to curse. But Jing Jia had no worries at all. She constantly used a fierce tone to force Xiao Bai to admit that she was the murderer, and even used a videotape to tell the truth, saying that the bishop was a pervert and forcing you and your girlfriend to do such things. If it were me, I would definitely have killed the bishop. Could Jing Jia's output not only fail to make Xiao Bai confess, but also successfusly stimulated Xiao Bai and blackened her on the spot.
Where the hell do you think you're going?
Excuse me?
Hey, you look at me when I'm talking to you, you bitch. Mr. Stampler! Fuck you, bitch! Come on!
Fortunately, the police promptly subdued Xiao Hei, and Xiao Bai also regained consciousness at this time, which made everyone believe that Xiao Bai had personality split. Afterwards, the judge and the two of them discussed how to determine the case. In the end, the judge decided to withdraw the jury and announce the verdict. The judge ruled that Xiao Bai was not guilty on the grounds of mental illness and sent him to the hospital for treatment. It is highly likely that he will be discharged soon. Yugo ultimately won the lawsuit and went to prison to tell Xiao Bai the trial result. Upon hearing that he was acquitted, Xiao Bai was overjoyed and didn't know how to thank Brother Yu. Before Yugo left, Xiaobai asked Yugo to take a message to Jin Jia and apologize for what he had done to Jin Jia in court. Yugo only took 2 steps and suddenly realized something was wrong. In theory, what Xiaohei did, Xiaobai should have no memory at all. Guess correctly how he remembered what he did to Jingjia. Yugo returned to the prison and questioned Xiaobai. How do you know you hurt Jingjia? After listening to it, Xiaobai seemed to realize that he had missed the deadline, but the verdict had already been passed and everything had become indifferent. Originally, there was no such thing as a dual personality from beginning to end. Xiaobai was not as harmless as he appeared on the surface. Xiaohei's personality was his true nature, and his girlfriend was not missing either. Xiaobai couldn't stand his girlfriend's obedience to the bishop, so he directly killed her, followed by the bishop. Later, in order to get rid of his guilt, he disguised himself as a dual personality and deceived everyone one by one. After learning the truth, Yugo felt a wave of nausea all over his body, but even though he already knew the truth by now, everything had settled in dust. In fact, many viewers have different opinions on the ending of this film. Some people believe that Xiaobai has always had multiple personalities, but because of the simplified stimulation in court, the second personality completely occupied the main personality. At the beginning, when the police chased Xiaobai, Xiaobai's clumsy escape posture was vastly different from Xiaohei's main personality. Moreover, Xiaobai cannot be certain that the lawyer defending him must be a famous lawyer like Yugo, who knows how to use multiple personalities to help him get out of guilt. But the seasonal perspective is that from beginning to end, Xiaobai did not suffer from personality split. In fact, at the beginning, Xiaobai did not intend to use personality split to talk to himself, which is why he said he saw a third person on the scene. In the first trial, Yugo applied for a psychological assessment for Xiaobai to delay time and gave him a reminder. And the second time Jingjia mentioned the front and back sides of the bishop with the vertical middle finger, it gave Xiaobai the direction to pretend to have multiple personalities. Therefore, before the trial, the novice was able to actively mention his girlfriend, but after the trial, he began to pretend to be very resistant to his girlfriend's affairs, and then simply disguised himself as a second personality. Another point is that in order to distinguish between his dual personality, Xiaobai changed his dominant hand to his right hand. But according to forensic identification, the killer of the bishop used his left hand. Do you think